Most parents hope that their hard work will pay off, their children will grow up happy, and they will have a good, supportive relationship until the end. Sheila von Wiese-Mack, like the majority of parents, did everything she could to bring her daughter up well. She gave her daughter the best education, took her to museums and symphonies, and traveled the world with her. When things got bad, she didn't give up. Even after her daughter hit her, broke her bones, stole from her, she kept trying. The police were called to her house dozens of times in under a decade, and yet she still believed things would get better. In August 2014, she took her daughter to Bali, a luxury resort, first-class flights, one last attempt to repair what was broken between them. A week later, her body was found stuffed in a suitcase in a trunk of a taxi. This is the Bali suitcase murder. On August 12, 2014, a taxi driver at the St. Regis Bali Resort was waiting for his passengers to return. A young American couple had flagged him down outside the hotel. They loaded a hard-sided silver suitcase into his trunk, placed 2 bags in the back seat, and told him to wait. Then they walked back into the hotel and didn't come back. 2 hours passed. The driver went inside to find hotel staff. Together, they went to the passengers' rooms. They were empty. When they returned to the taxi and opened the trunk, they saw blood seeping through the seams of the suitcase. The driver immediately headed to the police station. Inside that suitcase, wrapped in hotel bedding, was the body of 62-year-old Sheila von Wiese-Mack. Her face was severely battered. She had fractured facial bones, defensive wounds on her hands, and broken fingers. Forensic examination determined she died from blunt force trauma to the head and face, combined with suffocation. The young couple who loaded that suitcase into the taxi were Heather Mack, Sheila's 18-year-old daughter, and Tommy Schaefer, Heather's 21-year-old boyfriend. Police found them the next morning, sleeping in a budget motel about 6 miles away in Kuta. So who was Sheila von Wiese-Mack? She was born in 1952 in Minneapolis and grew up in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. She attended Simmons College in Boston, where she majored in political science. After graduation, she worked for Senator Ted Kennedy, doing research and various miscellaneous tasks often required when working in politics. She later got an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis and worked for the publisher Doubleday. Friends described her as eccentric, brilliant, and kind. She was well educated and had pursued multiple graduate degrees throughout her life. She was a patron of the arts who hosted concerts in her backyard and was deeply involved in Chicago's cultural and philanthropic community. At age 40, Sheila became pregnant. In 1995, she gave birth to her only child, Heather. Sheila was married to James L. Mack, a prominent jazz musician and composer who had worked with well-known musicians and symphonies both in Chicago and internationally. James Mack was significantly older than Sheila. He was born in 1929. The family lived in Oak Park, an affluent suburb of Chicago. In 2001, the family took a Royal Caribbean cruise. During the trip, James suffered a serious foot injury. According to court documents, he did not receive adequate medical treatment from the ship's doctor, which resulted in partial paralysis. He ended up confined to a wheelchair and required constant care. The family filed a lawsuit against Royal Caribbean. James Mack died in August 2006 at age 76 while the family was vacationing in Greece. He signed his will just 5 days before his death. The will stated his estate was intended only to provide for Heather. James Mack's estate wasn't large at first. He left behind a Chicago condo worth about $150,000 and a bank account containing around $1,800. The real money came later. In February 2011, a Cook County judge approved a $1.5 million settlement in the decade-old lawsuit against Royal Caribbean. Sheila received around $340,000 immediately after legal fees. Another $500,000 went to James Mack's estate. In June 2011, a judge authorized Sheila to pay herself the remaining $500,000 as the estate's sole beneficiary, and this money became important. Sheila was the executor of the estate, not the intended beneficiary, but a judge had allowed her to award herself money, and she was in charge of a lot of it. By the time of her death, Sheila controlled a trust fund worth approximately $1.56 million. And under the terms of the trust, Heather would receive small annual payments until age 30, and then the remaining balance. This should have been simple, but Sheila's relationship with Heather wasn't simple at all. Mark Bacharach, a close friend of 25 years, later told reporters that multiple friends told Sheila to kick Heather out. She was hanging out with a bad crowd. But Sheila always took her back. She could be as charming and self-effacingly sweet one minute, and then a vicious little monster the next, Bacharach said about Heather. The relationship between Sheila and Heather was not normal. It was violent, and it had been violent for years. Between January 2004 and June 2013, police were called to the Mack residence 86 times. 86 times in 9 years. The calls involved allegations of physical abuse, theft, and missing persons reports, with both mother and daughter calling police on each other. And the violence only escalated as Heather got older. In January 2010, Heather punched her mother's already broken ankle and was accused of stealing $1,000. In February 2011, Heather broke her mother's arm, and then she removed the phone cord to prevent Sheila from calling 911. In July 2011, Heather threatened her mother again. In November 2012, Heather bit her mother, leaving a bruise. Despite being the victim, Sheila refused to let police photograph the injury. But where did this violence come from? Well, there were allegations that James Mack had been verbally and physically abusive to Sheila before his death, sometimes in front of Heather. According to people who knew the family, Heather would tell her mother, "Well, Dad does it to you, so I can too." Oak Park Police Sergeant Rasul Freelane, who dealt with the family firsthand, has since spoken about how the case highlighted a gap in the system. Child-to-parent abuse is a form of domestic violence that often goes unrecognized. And despite there being 86 police calls to the residence, the violence only escalated. Heather attended Oak Park and River Forest High School, but withdrew during her junior year in 2013. She was described as a talented dancer with a rebellious streak. While at Oak Park High, Heather began dating Tommy Schaefer, an unemployed rapper who went by the stage name Mr. X, or Tommy X. Tommy had dropped out of Columbia College to focus on his music. The professor who taught him there said he saw promise in Tommy, but that Tommy didn't have a stable home life. He was couch surfing between friends' houses. Tommy also had a criminal history. There was an outstanding warrant for his arrest from February 2013, which was issued after he failed to appear in court on a marijuana possession charge in Indiana. Sheila, predictably, did not approve of the relationship. She sold the family home in Oak Park for $650,000 and moved herself and Heather to a high-rise condo in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood. But this move didn't change anything. Heather kept seeing Tommy. Not only did they keep seeing each other, but Heather became pregnant by Tommy. According to her defense lawyer, this was Heather's third pregnancy. The lawyer claimed Sheila had pressured Heather to terminate 2 previous pregnancies and was seeking power of attorney over her daughter to force a third abortion. In July 2014, just weeks before the Bali trip, there was another incident. Police found Heather and Tommy partying with 7 other people in a room at the Conrad Chicago Hotel on Rush Street. Sheila had reported that her credit card was being used without permission. The couple had allegedly used the card to book the room and had run up nearly $1,000 in charges. Despite everything, Sheila decided to take a vacation to Bali with Heather in August 2014. Friends said she viewed it as a chance for a new beginning for their relationship. On August 2nd, 2014, Sheila and Heather boarded a plane at O'Hare International Airport and flew first class to Indonesia. They checked into the St. Regis Bali Hotel in Nusa Dua, one of the most exclusive hotels on the island. But the trip was already compromised. Heather had stolen her mother's credit card and used it to book a business class ticket for Tommy to follow them to Bali. The ticket cost a staggering $12,200, and of course, Sheila did not know Tommy was coming. Before the trip, Heather and Tommy had been exchanging text messages. These messages would later become key evidence. As Heather sat in the airport lounge waiting to board, Tommy texted her, "I can't wait to be rich. I seriously can't wait. I'm so geeked. I'm like thinking of lavish lifestyles." Heather responded, "LMAO, I'm in the lounge now. I love you. I'm about to board." The two compared themselves to Bonnie and Clyde. In another exchange, Heather wrote, "I know what makes people tick. The witch. I know what make her tick. I'm with her so much. I know her habit, how she acts, what she does at certain times. It's like breaking out of jail. It takes several years of watching. I have been watching her routine. And I know what I do control. I'm sneaky, I'm smart, and I watch. Trust Bonnie. Don't make everyone else mistake and underestimate me." Even though Sheila was unaware of these messages and didn't know Tommy was on his way, she sensed something was wrong almost immediately. On August 5th, she sent an email to a friend. "I am afraid of her and fear that I should not have come here at all." On August 8th, 4 days before she died, Sheila sent another email to a friend, complaining that Heather had been missing from the hotel for 4 hours. She wrote that she was afraid, though the friend wasn't sure if her fear was for her own safety or her daughter's. Tommy arrived at the St. Regis in the early morning hours of August 12th. Hotel staff noticed he had checked into a separate room that was billed to Sheila's account without her authorization. When staff showed Sheila a photocopy of Tommy's passport to identify him, she reacted with shock. "That thief Tommy Schaefer is here," she said, surprised. She asked how he planned to pay for the luxury room. Security camera footage from the early hours of August 12 shows Sheila in the hotel lobby in a panic. She was frantic because Heather was missing. The security staff was preparing to search the resort when Heather suddenly appeared in the lobby. Mother and daughter argued. Later that morning, footage shows Sheila having another argument with Tommy in the hotel lobby. A hotel employee overheard Sheila telling Heather that she and Tommy would face prosecution in Chicago for the credit card fraud, and this was the last time Sheila von Wiese-Mack was seen alive. Heather and Tommy hadn't just been sending romantic texts. They had been planning Sheila's murder for months, and they weren't alone. Tommy's cousin, Robert Bibbs, was part of the conspiracy. Before the Bali trip, the three of them met at Bibbs' Chicago home to discuss killing Sheila. Heather had offered Tommy $50,000 to do it. Bibbs expected a cut of the inheritance. On the day of the murder, Tommy and Bibbs exchanged texts. When Tommy told Heather had already tried and failed to kill her mother, Bibbs offered suggestions such as drowning and suffocation. In one message, he wrote, "Go sit on her face with a pillow then." Tommy texted back, "She wants me to right now while she's snoozing." Bibbs told him to do it, but to be careful and avoid cameras. Meanwhile, Heather and Tommy were also texting each other about methods: suffocation, making it look like a self-inflicted death on the beach. That morning, Heather asked Tommy to come to the room she was sharing with her mother. She told him to bring everything. Tommy brought a heavy metal fruit bowl from his hotel room. He hid it under his shirt. Later, when asked why, he said it was a precaution. According to Tommy's later testimony, he went to the room shared by Sheila and Heather to discuss Heather's pregnancy. He claimed the conversation became heated when Sheila demanded that Heather get an abortion, threatening to harm the unborn baby if she didn't. Tommy claimed that Sheila then grabbed him by the throat and choked him for about 30 seconds. He said he couldn't breathe, blood was rushing to his head, and his eyes became watery. He said he reached for the fruit bowl before she could. "I was angry. I took the fruit bowl and hit her," Tommy testified in tears. He said he did not remember how many times he struck her. This self-defense claim was later contradicted by extensive evidence of premeditation, including the months of text messages planning the murder. What is certain is that Tommy beat Sheila to death with the metal handle of the fruit bowl. The beating was brutal. The Indonesian court handling the case would later describe Tommy's actions as sadistic. Heather was present during the murder. According to evidence presented at her U.S. federal trial, Heather held her hand over her mother's mouth while Tommy beat her. The forensic evidence showing the defensive wounds on her hands and broken fingers showed that Sheila fought desperately for her life. After Sheila stopped breathing, Tommy said he tried to give her artificial respiration. He said he was trembling and scared. He claimed he even tried to call 911 on his mobile phone before realizing he was not in the United States. Heather allegedly ran to the bathroom in panic, staying there for about 3 minutes before returning and tried to revive her mother. But Sheila was already dead. The couple then had to figure out what to do with the body. They wrapped Sheila's body in hotel bedding. They got a suitcase from the room, but it was too small. Sheila's body wouldn't fit. Heather sat on the suitcase to help compress her mother's body while Tommy forced it closed. Security footage shows them pulling it through the polished lobby of the St. Regis past other guests and out of the front entrance. They loaded it into the taxi. Their plan was to leave the body and flee. But when the taxi driver refused to accept their fare without them in the car, they panicked and fled to the budget motel in Kuta. Police arrested them there the next morning. When police first questioned Heather and Tommy, they told a story about armed robbers. They claimed that masked assailants had invaded their hotel room, taken them captive, and killed Sheila. They said they managed to escape, but this story fell apart immediately. There was no evidence of any break-in. Hotel surveillance showed no intruders. It showed only Heather and Tommy calmly dragging the suitcase through the lobby. On August 15th, both were formally designated as prisoners under Indonesian law. On August 20th, a urine test confirmed that Heather was pregnant. Initial speculation was that she might be faking the pregnancy to get sent home, but the pregnancy was real. On September 19th, Tommy admitted to killing Sheila. Heather admitted to helping stuff the body into the suitcase. The forensic evidence from the hotel room was extensive. Blood spatter, fingerprints, and signs of a violent struggle were documented throughout the suite. The murder weapon, the metal fruit bowl with its heavy handle, was recovered, but the most damaging evidence was digital. Police analyzed the phones belonging to Heather and Tommy, and they found months of text messages detailing the murder plot. They found the messages sent back and forth on the day of the killing, discussing methods and timing. They found the communications with Robert Bibbs. Investigators also discovered that Heather had used her mother's credit card to book Tommy's flight. She had helped her mother's killer travel to the crime scene. And the motive was clear, the $1.56 million trust fund. In January 2015, Indonesian prosecutors charged Heather and Tommy with premeditated murder. Both faced a potential sentence of death by firing squad. Tommy claimed self-defense, saying Sheila attacked him first. Heather's lawyers acknowledged she was present, but argued that she hadn't participated in the killing and had suffered years of abuse from her mother. On April 21st, 2015, both were found guilty. Tommy was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The judge called his actions sadistic, but said his polite behavior in court earned him a lighter sentence. Heather was sentenced to 10 years. The judges showed leniency because she had given birth to a daughter, Stella, in prison just weeks before the verdict. The death sentence was on the table. Neither received it. Friends of Sheila were disappointed, but this wasn't the end. The FBI was building a case back home. In September 2015, Robert Bibbs was arrested in Chicago for a conspiracy to commit the foreign murder of a U.S. national. The FBI had found his text messages on Heather's and Tommy's phones. In one text to his girlfriend before the murder, Bibbs had written, "Babe, we're gonna be rich. Heed those words." At sentencing, Bibbs apologized, claiming he was drinking heavily and never expected them to actually go through with it. The judge wasn't persuaded. It's haunting that someone who had every opportunity to step in and prevent a violent murder, in fact, did nothing of the kind, she said. Bibbs got 9 years. Heather gave birth to her daughter Stella on March 17, 2015, while awaiting her verdict. Under Indonesian law, the baby could stay with her in Karabokan prison until age 2. When Stella turned 2 in March 2017, a custody battle erupted. Tommy's mother, Kia Walker, filed for guardianship in Illinois. Heather opposed it. She wanted Stella to stay in Bali so she could still see her. A Cook County judge denied Walker's petition, ruling she couldn't grant guardianship without both parents' consent. Instead, Stella went to Oshar Suartama, an Australian woman married to a Balinese man who had befriended Heather during the trial, and served as her interpreter. Heather broke down in tears when it came time to hand over her daughter, but she believed it was the right choice. Heather earned a 34-month reduction of her sentence for good behavior. On October 29, 2021, after just 7 years, she was released. She wanted to stay in Indonesia for Stella, saying it was safer than Chicago. But immigration said no. Her visa had expired. Both she and Stella, American citizens under Indonesian law, were deported immediately. As Heather's plane approached O'Hare on November 3, 2021, a federal indictment awaited. Filed in 2017 and kept under seal, it charged Heather and Tommy with conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice for hiding Sheila's body in a suitcase. Federal agents were waiting for her. When Heather landed, she was arrested. 6-year-old Stella was taken and placed with a court-appointed guardian, attorney Vanessa Favia. Heather pleaded not guilty. She faced life in prison. This time, she wasn't being tried as an accessory. She was being tried as a full co-conspirator under the legal principle that Americans can be prosecuted for murdering other Americans abroad when the conspiracy was formed on U.S. soil. And the custody battle over Stella continued. 4 people sought guardianship: Kia Walker, Lisa Hellman, Heather's cousin from Colorado, Diana Roque Ellis, a California woman claiming to be Sheila's best friend, and Oshar Suartama. There were allegations that some parties wanted to exploit Stella for book or TV deals. In February 2023, Judge Stephanie Miller awarded guardianship to Lisa Hellman. She said she wanted to make sure Stella would not be used as a pawn or exploited in any fashion. In June 2023, Heather Mack changed her plea. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiring to kill a U.S. national. Under the terms of the plea agreement, she faced a maximum of 28 years in prison. Prosecutors recommended 28 years. Her defense lawyers asked for 15 years, with credit for the 7 years she had already served in Indonesia. On January 17, 2024, Heather Mack appeared for sentencing before U.S. District Judge Matthew Kennelly in Chicago. Heather, wearing an orange jumpsuit, remained mostly impassive during her uncle's statement, occasionally looking at attendees and giving small smiles to some. But when it was her turn to speak, she apologized through tears. "It breaks my heart hearing you cry," she told her Aunt Debbie. "There is no excuse for trying to harm her. It doesn't matter what my relationship was with my mother. I miss and love my mother." Heather Mack was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison, and she was also ordered to pay $262,708 in restitution and a $50,000 fine. Her attorney said that with credit for the 2 years she spent in custody in Chicago awaiting trial and good behavior credits available for federal prisoners, she could end up serving roughly 20 years total. Tommy Schaefer remains in prison in Indonesia, still serving his 18-year sentence. He has also been charged in the U.S. indictment, and those charges remain pending against him. The trust fund that Heather killed for, the $1.56 million, was eventually settled in 2018. The beneficiary is Stella. Stella, now 10 years old, is still being raised by Lisa Hellman in Colorado. As for Sheila von Wiese-Mack, she spent her whole life trying to be a good mother. She had Heather at 40 after years of wanting a child. She tried to broaden her daughter's horizons by taking her to museums, to the symphony, to the opera. She took her on vacations around the world, even when friends told her to stop, even when she was afraid, even after years of suffering beatings, theft, and broken bones. In her final hours, she was still trying, still hoping that this trip, this conversation, this moment might be the one that finally fixed things between them. Instead, her daughter held her mouth shut while she was being beaten to death. Some people spend their lives loving someone who will never love them back. Sheila never stopped believing her daughter could change. Maybe that's love, maybe that's denial, maybe there's no difference when you're a parent. Whatever the truth, Sheila put her trust in the wrong place and paid an unbelievable price. The only consolation is that all parties involved face justice and are serving their time. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.